Good evening. This is Donna Blumquist, librarian at the LaSalle Public Library. Welcome to tonight's virtual program, Celebrate the Holidays in Space. Before we begin, just a few reminders. This coming Saturday, December 10th, from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m., the library invites families to celebrate the holiday season and the gift of reading. At the event, youth of all ages will receive a new gift book, a 3D printed snowman ornament, and a pair of winter gloves donated by the Johnson Oil Company. Youth will also receive a laser-cut engraved holiday ornament created on the library's Gold Forge. A professional photo backdrop will be available for families to capture wonderful photos. The children's room will remain open throughout the event, and staff will be reading holiday stories. Families do not need a library card, nor do they need to be LaSalle residents. All are welcome. On Tuesday, December 13th at 7 p.m. Central Time, the library will join libraries across the state in hosting a special virtual holiday program with author and media contributor Shauna Seaver, who will share her love of food, baking, and tips to make upcoming holidays gatherings delicious. And on Wednesday, December 14th, from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m., the library will host community residents Martina Single and Kaya Mazengill for a fun evening of popular board games. The program will take place in the library's meeting room. For more information, please call the library. As always, all library programming is free and open to the public. It is also shareable, so please feel free to pass the information on to others. We also want to hear from you tonight. Please post your questions for tonight's program in the chat. And now, tonight we are welcoming NASA Solar System Ambassador Joel Knapper. Joel will help us find out about celebrating the holidays in zero gravity. Joel, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Donna. It's always a pleasure to be here with everybody. My name is Joel Knapper. I am a NASA Solar System Ambassador, and I've done programs for the last 12 or so years, and it's really fun to do a new program tonight about how astronauts celebrate the holidays in space. Donna, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, we'll get started here. Well, when we look back at the programs NASA has had, for the first few years, we really didn't have astronauts up in space during the holidays. For the Mercury missions, which was a one-person crew, and the Gemini missions that had 2 astronauts in the crew, usually we would avoid the holiday time. Several reasons for that. One of the main ones is there are always thousands of people on the ground who are helping with everything with these missions. So, you always think of the astronauts up in space, but there's so many people on the ground who have to make sure everything's going fine and who are there in case of emergencies. And so, not to disrupt their mission, their family time, we typically avoided the holiday times. But that all changed with Project Apollo, when we actually started going to the moon. When you go out to the moon, a lot of it depends on where the moon is, depending on where the Earth is at the time. And the first crew, the first and only Apollo crew to be away from Earth during the Christmas season was Apollo 8. Now, Apollo 8 was supposed to be a test of the lunar lander, which was the vehicle that astronauts would use to go down to the moon. So they have Borman, Lovell, and Anders are the 3 astronauts that were assigned to test the lunar lander in Earth orbit. The problem was the lunar lander wasn't ready yet. They were still working on it. In the meantime, the United States found out that our rival, the group we were racing to the moon, the Russians at the time, had a large rocket on the pad, and we were afraid that they were going to launch a cosmonaut to the moon and say that they beat us to the moon. So there was a lot of pressure to maybe send Apollo 8 onto the moon. Now, to do that, they would use the Saturn V rocket Now, this was a huge rocket for years until the Space Launch System flew. It was the most powerful rocket the United States had ever built. It's able to send 95,900 pounds to the moon. The problem here was the mission that launched, the unmanned mission that had launched with the Saturn V earlier had run into problems. One of the engines shut down. It had what they called the pogo effect. Think of riding a pogo stick and you're hopping up and down. That's what the astronauts would have felt riding on this. And so if astronauts had been aboard that mission, they would have aborted and gotten away from the rocket. So so that was some of the concerns about launching a crew for the first time on this huge rocket to the moon. And again, they're going to the moon. This is a 3-day journey to get there, and they would go into orbit, maybe 10 orbits around the moon and come back. So it's not, if something went wrong with the spacecraft, it was not quick to get home. But they talked about it. Of course, the astronauts were willing to go. They had faith in the engineers who said that Saturn V, they had fixed the problems with it. So on December 21st, 1968, the astronauts of Apollo 8 took off for the moon on their Saturn V. And I have a little video of the launch of this Saturn V.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
So imagine yourself in 1968 watching these 3 astronauts ride this most powerful rocket onto the moon. The launch was successful, and it took them took the 3 astronauts to the moon. And on December 24th, on Christmas Eve, they fired the engine of their spacecraft and went into orbit around the moon. Now, to prepare for this flight, the astronauts, one of the astronauts, Frank Borman, he was a churchgoer. He went to the Episcopal Church in Texas, and he was supposed to do some reading during Christmas Day services. And then they made this decision they were going to send Apollo 8 to the moon. So he had to explain he couldn't be there to do the church readings. So they said, the pastor kidded Frank about going to such lengths, going all the way to the moon to get out of having to read in front of the church members there. But he kind of got him back. NASA told Apollo 8 Commander Frank Borman, they told him to say something appropriate when they got to the moon. They didn't tell him Didn't tell them what to say, didn't give them any suggestions, only that it should be appropriate. So the three astronauts talked to each other and they were trying to figure out what to say. And somebody had the idea of reading the words from Genesis. And that turned out to be something very appropriate for this first time that humans were so far away from any other human on Earth at the moon. Here's the live video and reading that this Apollo 8 crew gave during Christmas Eve around the moon.
We're now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning was the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
So they spent Christmas Eve and Christmas Day circling the moon 10 times. And then on Christmas Day, they actually fired their engine to head back to Earth. And this was the first crew to spend Christmas in space. Now, one thing I want to talk about is food, because a lot of times when we think of holidays, we think of food. The astronauts on Apollo, all of their food was dehydrated, and they had to mix water, which was produced from their fuel cells. They mixed water in these packages, so they would kind of almost drink some of the food, or they'd at least rehydrate it. You can see in this picture, there's some crackers, orangeade, tang, we would call it, and some meat. But they did actually slip some turkey and dressing into the packs so that the Apollo 8 crew got to have a little more traditional meal on Christmas. Now, that'd be careful, though. The last thing you needed was astronauts sick on a trip to the moon and a few days to come back. You wouldn't want to be aboard with somebody who had the stomach flu. Now, this is Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Anders in 1968. They are the only Apollo crew who is still alive. As of September this year, they are all still alive and in good spirits, and they think about being the first to visit the moon. Jim Lovell on the far right, he's from the Chicago area. He actually is well known for being on Apollo 13. He was going to land on the moon on Apollo 13, but they had the explosion on the way and barely got back to Earth in one piece. But they're all doing well. They're all in their 90s, I believe, but they're all doing well. The next group of astronauts to spend time in space was the Skylab astronauts. Now, Skylab was a space station, the first United States space station. And what they had basically done was they took the last stage of the Saturn V that we saw launch. Instead of fueling it to send people to the moon, they gutted it, and they built a laboratory in that last stage so that astronauts could go up in Earth orbit and spend time getting used to living in space with room. And they also had a telescope on it that looked at the sun called the Apollo Telescope Mount. Had a couple solar wings on it. And it was really the first space station for the United States. Now, Skylab was launched in May of 1973 on the very last Saturn V, and you can see the launch there, but it ran into trouble. Soon during its launch, there was a shield, a micrometeorite shield that was supposed to protect the station from getting hit by space debris. It tore away during the launch. And you could see when the astronauts actually went to visit, you could see where that shield had torn away. You could see the metal here was getting really hot because it wasn't protected by the sun. Also, the solar ring arrays that provided power for the station, one of them was completely ripped off. You could see the wires hanging there. And the other, you could see kind of still folded in. It was strapped in by a piece of metal that was kind of holding it in place. So the astronauts, when they went up to Skylab, they had to put a parasol over the area that the shield had ripped away so that it could be protected from the sun and cool down. But the other thing they did was they reached out and used some snippers and was able to pull that, get that piece of debris there off and pull that solar wing out. So the astronauts saved Skylab, or Skylab wouldn't have been available for those astronauts to live and work aboard. So Skylab, 3 crews got to spend 28 days, 59 days, and the last crew spent 84 days aboard Skylab. You can see one of the things I always love to point out that they had a shower on Skylab. And what they would do is they would pull this collared item, they'd pull it up to the ceiling and use zippers to zip it shut, and then they would spray water, and the water, since they were in zero gravity, the water would float. But when they got done, they had to use a vacuum cleaner to vacuum up all the water. So the astronauts said by the time they got done, they were so cold they didn't even want to use the shower anymore. So that's why there's no shower on any of the other space stations, because it was a kind of a cool idea, but all the cleanup, it was just too much trouble for what it was worth. You could see an astronaut up here checking the teeth on another astronaut, and then some of them playing around. This is the third crew. They let their beards grow a little bit. Skylab had a little better food than the Apollo food. They had a lot of things in cans, like pull tab cans here, which they had in these trays that could heat the food up for them. You could see they had a little table that they could kind of strap to. Now this is in their trainer on Earth. Otherwise, they would kind of be floating. They could lock their feet into the ground so they would hold still. But they did have a porthole to view the Earth there. But these cans come into importance here with Christmas, because the astronauts built a Christmas tree out of the cans, out of the food cans, or actually the spindles that held the food cans for them here. So this is the crew of the third and final Skylab flight, and they're going to talk a little bit about building their Christmas tree.
The tree was constructed out of food cans. Our food is packaged in small tins that are placed in large what are called over cans, long cans, and there is a structure inside the can which is called a herringbone, which really it acts as serves as a container for the cans so that they can all be pulled out at once. And it was these herringbones, so to speak, that we used to construct the limbs and leaves of the tree. Now the small decorations that we have were sort of gathered from here and there in the spacecraft. Of course, we all shared in the construction of the Christmas tree, and of course, there was the one final inspiration, which rests on the top of the tree, and I'll let Dr. Ed Gibson explain that one. Well, first thing you notice about this tree, as I imagine you've noticed about your trees at home, it has no lights. We're very energy conscious up here also. Piece on the top, I think it's fairly straightforward. It's what you normally put on top of a tree, a star. But we've kept up with the times we're living right now and made it fit the scene, the very day and the very week for us. And perhaps it is very old at the same time. People will be debating that one for a long time. But for us, it symbolizes Christmas. So from the crew of Skylab 3, we wish all of you a very Merry Christmas and an extra special message to all the guys that are going to be away from their families tomorrow, working with us on our EVA in order to get some good photography of the comet Kohoutek. To all of you guys down there that'll be working with us tomorrow and tonight, Christmas Eve, we thank you very much for your interest and your dedication. And to you, we wish a very special season's greetings. So long.
So on top of the tree, they had a star, and they had a comet on the star because the comet Kohoutek came through around Christmas time, and they were able to view it and take some pictures of it from Skylab. All right. So after Skylab, the next major program for NASA was the Space Shuttle program that ran from 1981 through 2010. Now, you would have thought, well, there's a lot of opportunities with all those 124 missions or so, a lot of opportunities to be in space during the holidays, but not really that many. Again, some of the same reasons that we didn't fly Mercury and Gemini during the holidays was some of the same reasons we really didn't fly a lot of space shuttle missions. There were a couple during the Christmas time holidays. One was during Hanukkah on the Discovery Hubble mission. So it was a mission to service the Hubble telescope in 1993, and Jeff Hoffman went up with his little dreidel there and celebrated Hanukkah. So I have a little video of him talking about that.
In Endeavor, Houston, for Jeff, all of America would like to know what you've got and what you're doing with it.
Well, this is the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, and there's various ways that we celebrate it. And one of the games that we play is a little game with a dreidel, and it's something that you spin, and then you see which side comes up, and according to that, you either win or lose. And I was just trying to see how you might reinterpret the rules for spaceflight, since there's no up or down. And I guess on the subject, to help the celebration, I also brought along the other thing that we do. Hanukkah is the festival of light. It lasts 8 days, and to celebrate it, we light a little menorah, which has 8 candles, and you light one more every day until finally on the 8th day, you have 8 candles. And so I brought a little traveling menorah. Of course, up in the shuttle, we're not going to actually light the candles to help the celebration of the season. I brought it along. It's a little silver traveling menorah. And so with that and the dreidel, I'm all set for my onboard Hanukkah celebration.
All right. Well, that was interesting that one of the two space shuttle missions was a Hubble mission, because the second space shuttle mission that had to do with span Christmas was STS-103, which was another Hubble maintenance mission, and which lasted from December 20th through the 28th. You know, another reason why they didn't want to have shuttles in space around Christmas was because for the computer software that ran the shuttle, it was very complicated software, and there was some concern about launching in one year and landing in the next. So if you had planned on a shuttle mission and it had been delayed, maybe there was bad landing weather and they delayed it, if you got into where you were launched in December and you were landing in January over New Year, there was some concerns about whether that software was really tested well to be able to handle that change in year. So that was another reason there wasn't too many shuttle flights around the Christmas time. It wasn't until the era of the International Space Station that we had a lot of crews up in space during the holidays, because it was permanently manned from the year 2000 through today. It is still permanently manned. Now, the International Space Station was 3 times the space of Skylab, and Skylab was pretty large space. It was a big empty tank, but the International Space Station is much larger, 3 times, 29,000 cubic feet. And in 2000, in November of 2000, the first expedition went up to the space station. Now, the space station goes by expedition. An expedition is about a 6-month stay aboard the space station. Now, sometimes you have a crew of 3, a crew of 6, even 7 people could be on an expedition. Sometimes a couple of the members of an expedition may go home and be replaced. So you could be a part of an expedition and be part of the next expedition as well. But from November 2000 to March 2001, the first occupants of the International Space Station was William Shepard, Yuri Gudzenko, and Sergei Kirkorov, and they spent Thanksgiving and Christmas up on the International Space Station. Expedition 16 in 2007 included Peggy Whitson. Now, Peggy Whitson became the most traveled woman in space. She had actually spent the most time in space of any astronaut, actually commanded the space station twice in her years as an astronaut. But there they are with their socks, their socks for Santa and the little Christmas tree. This is Expedition 18 from 2008. It looks like they have, that might be stuffing and maybe mashed potatoes in there as they're getting ready for a Christmas dinner. This is Expedition 22 in 2009. They all seem to have the Christmas hats on, and they're in the space station getting ready to have a meal at Christmas time. This is Expedition 26 from 2010. Now, interesting, this is Scott Kelly, who not on this flight, but a few years later, he would fly up and spend a year aboard a space station. He was part of, I think it was 3 different expeditions as part of his stay aboard the space station, but he actually got to spend a year up on the station. But there they have their snowmen on their shirts. And this is Expedition 30 in 2011. They have a pretty nice Christmas tree and some hats there. And this is Expedition 34, who went up in 2012, and it looks like they have the same Christmas tree up there, and they actually brought some music. They have their stockings lined up over one of the nodes that connects all the parts of the space station together. Now, sometimes when you're up in space at the holidays, sometimes you have to do some work. On Expedition 38 in 2013, they had a problem where a coolant pump that is a refrigerator size unit that pumped coolant to cool the cool like the solar panels and the electronic equipment. It malfunctioned. Now they have a redundant one, but if it were to fail, they would have had to abandon the space station. So they had to go out on an emergency spacewalk. Now this is Rick Mastriacho and Mike Hopkins. They're actually having their, that's a picture of them with their Thanksgiving dinner. It looks like some ham there, but they actually went out on Christmas Eve and have a little video showing them out doing a spacewalk, replacing one of these refrigerator sized cooling pumps. Now, again, they had spares aboard. Actually wasn't really aboard. It was mounted on the outside of the space station, but it was critical that they get this coolant replaced, because had there been a problem with the second cooler, the redundant cooler, they would have had to come home. They could not continue to operate the station and generate that heat without some repairs there. So they were busy working on Christmas Eve to make sure that they could stay aboard the station. Now, this is Expedition 42 in 2014. You could see that they have dressed up the spacesuits that they use for those extra vehicular journeys outside in space. They have hats on them. They also have, it looks like they have a package of milk and some cookies there. I wonder who, I guess for Santa Claus. And they have their stockings hung there too at one of the nodes. This is Expedition 50, and here's a familiar face. This is Peggy Whitson at age 56. She was the oldest woman in space, and she got to command this expedition as well. And it looks like they have some new hats here. Looks like this maybe the same Christmas tree out there in the back. Expedition 54 in 2017, St. John's grad, it looks like. And this is Expedition 58 in 2018. They have theirs, looks like they've got stockings. It looks like that might be a elf on the shelf peeking through there as well. Now, Jessica Meir on Expedition 61 in 2019, she took a picture of her Hanukkah socks that she displayed. Now, this is the cupola. This is a little module that has windows all around. So when spacecraft are docking to the station, they can help guide make sure that the spacecraft are coming in okay, and actually they could pilot or they can control the arm and grab spacecraft and dock them from the cupola. So from about 250 miles above Earth, she's got her Hanukkah socks on there. This is Expedition 64 in 2020. Expedition 66 in 2021. Looks like they are having fun with their reindeer reindeer antlers there. Oop. Go on to the next one. This is Kayla Barron on Expedition 66. Looks like she's got presents all around her there. All right, this is Expedition 61 in 2019. And we're going to end with a couple expeditions giving us Thanksgiving and Christmas wishes. I think this is 61, giving us some Christmas wishes here.
Happy holidays. You know, my favorite thing about the holiday season is that it's a time when the world slows down and we all get a chance to think about and appreciate and reflect on what's really important, which is the people that we love and spending time together. However you're celebrating this holiday this year, may it be one full of joy.
You know, when I think about missing my family on the ground, I know that they're visiting family and spending time with family, and we're going to get to do much the same thing. And I'm going to bring some of my own family traditions with us on board the International Space Station. On Christmas Eve, we turn out all the lights in the house and we just have candlelight. Now, we can't have candles and candlelight on the International Space Station, but we can turn the lights down low and we can watch Christmas movies. And so we're going to do something like that when we'll enjoy our Christmas Eve together and welcome in Christmas Day the next morning.
This time of the year means for most people spending time with their family and friends. We have special friends aboard our crew, and we're very happy to be together. But of course, we don't get to spend it with our families. At the same time, our thoughts go to all those who are deployed to dangerous and critical areas and are doing service. And they also cannot spend their time with their family and friends. We are thinking about you during our time up here in orbit.
As a child growing up, I was fortunate enough to celebrate 2 different holidays all through the holiday season, both Christmas and Hanukkah. So whatever it is that you're celebrating this holiday season, we hope that you find peace and love and enjoy spending time with all those around you that are important. We'll be celebrating up here as well with a few additional special items.
The stockings were floated by the chimney with care. Now, what are we going to stuff in these stockings? I think we might need some goodies and treats.
Well, Thanksgiving, we just had turkey. So for this holiday, we have special smoked salmon.
We had to come all the way to space to try to get away from fruitcake, but it didn't work. We got some anyway.
We have hot apple cider and hot cocoa. Happy holidays!
Looks like they had a lot of fun up there on putting that message together for us here. And the last crew that we're going to hear from the space station is our current crew. This is Expedition 68, they are all circling the Earth right now as we are giving this presentation. They're up in space right now, and I have their wishes from us from Thanksgiving the other day.
Greetings from the International Space Station. We, the members of Expedition 68, would like to wish you and your loved ones a happy Thanksgiving, and also share with you why Thanksgiving is special to us here in space.
Here we are on board the International Space Station, our home away from home. Today, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the hundreds and thousands of people who support the human space program.
And to our family and friends and all those following along the mission, we are thankful that you're able to be a part of Expedition 68 with us. It is the love of friends and family that help make dreams come true.
Up here, we're on Greenwich Mean Time, which means that for half the planet, we live in the future. So much so that we'll be celebrating Thanksgiving on Tuesday this year and working a bit on Thursday, but I think we'll still have some time to catch some football and eat some great Thanksgiving fare. Happy Thanksgiving!
Right, so that's our crew currently up on the International Space Station. So maybe someday you'll get to visit a hotel up in space and spend Christmas Eve in maybe a swimming pool circling the Earth. Or maybe one day you'll be on a crew that lands on Mars, and maybe you'll run into Santa Claus out there. But it looks like most of our astronauts who go up into space, they have meals and spend time thinking of family just like they do on Earth. So I hope you enjoyed this little glimpse of how astronauts celebrate the holidays in space, and appreciate your time today.
It was just great, Joel. I so enjoyed this. I know we had a couple of comments. Can you go to the chat at your end?
I don't think well, I'll try here. Let me stop sharing.
I can read them to you if you'd like. Is that easier?
If you could read them, that would probably be better here.
Sure. Well, Elizabeth asks, my 9-year-old would like to know if Santa delivers presents to the ISS himself, or does it need to go through a NASA rocket?
Well, they won't tell us for sure, but I will say this: we do resupply the space station often with fresh supplies. And one of the favorite things of the astronauts is when that resupply craft docks, they love opening up the hatch and smelling the fresh fruit that's up there that they send up there on the space to the space station. And around Christmas time, they actually send gifts from friends and family, so they have gifts to be able to see. Now, there's not a chimney for Santa to go down, but he may knock at the station, and I'm sure they would make arrangements to let Santa in and deliver some presents.
I think that's probably a good scientific way to look at it, for sure. Also, Hannah asks, if you, Joel, were given the opportunity, would you spend the holidays in space?
Oh, absolutely. It would be a lot of fun to float around and to see Earth from 250 miles above the planet. That would be really exciting, and we're heading back to the moon, and so there will be in not too distant future, there will be people living on the moon, and we'll be able to add to this presentation and talk about astronauts celebrating Christmas and Thanksgiving on the moon.
And the Artemis mission right now is coming back, ready to splash down on December 11th. And that is the first one, right? We're going to ask you to fill us in on Artemis so that we can think about those days in the future when we can celebrate Christmas again on the moon. But before we do, Kristen has a comment. She said, do you think one day astronauts will celebrate the holidays on a mission to walk on Mars?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we're gearing up to do. We're going back to the moon because we haven't been there since 1972. So we need to learn just to communicate and to get to the moon, and we can develop habitats and resupply and procedures that will help us when we go to Mars. So I am certain we will be going to Mars in the not too distant future. Probably within all of our lifetimes here, we will have astronauts heading to Mars and exploring the red planet. So much interesting things to find out there. So no, I have no doubt that we will be on Mars soon.
Yeah, and that is one of the ideas behind the Artemis mission, to have a place so that we no longer have to send everything to Mars and with all of that extra weight, break the gravity that holds us down. And instead they could just launch to Mars from a supply station. Would that be what we're talking about?
Well, what we would probably do is send some supplies to Mars. The rover that we have on Mars took an instrument with it that allows it to convert the atmosphere of Mars into oxygen, and it proved it could do that. So imagine landing a large instrument that can convert the atmosphere of Mars to oxygen and hydrogen. And you could make rocket fuel, you could make water, you could make breathing oxygen. So you could land something that could automatically generate oxygen and hydrogen and water, and then you could land a crew there and they wouldn't have to bring it with them. So that's some of the technology we're working on. The Space Launch System that launched a few weeks ago that sent Artemis into space, it's the first key that we needed, a powerful rocket to be able to launch these huge heavy payloads into space. Artemis 1 went into orbit around the moon, sort of like Apollo 8, although it was a little further orbit. It was called a retrograde orbit. So it actually went out further in space than all of our Apollo astronauts did. Now, there were no crew aboard. And, one of the remaining tests here is to make sure that when this capsule comes back to Earth this coming Sunday, that heat shield is able to withstand entering Earth's atmosphere at that faster speed, and so the higher temperature. If that all goes well, the next launch of the Space Launch System will actually take a crew to the moon. And then the mission after that, we are planning to land on the moon. And among the astronauts who will land on the moon will be the first female astronaut to walk on the moon. So we're really excited about that over the next few years. If you would like, Donna, I have a little video of the SLS launch the other day from that gives us a really good view of it here.
Absolutely.
Let's watch this most powerful rocket, Saturn V class rocket. Here's a slow motion of it. This was 2 solid rocket boosters on the side and 4 engines that flew on space shuttles during the space shuttle program. The blast of this rocket launching blew the elevator doors off the elevator on the launch pad as well. It's pretty powerful. I'll show you one more video too of the Orion capsule as it went around the moon here. So here you can see the capsule where when we send astronauts, they'll be in this section, and you could see the moon down here and Earth above the solar panel there. So a view we don't often see beyond our moon, where the moon is crossing in front of the Earth there. The capsule flew within, I think, about 80 miles of the surface of the moon as it fired its engine to head back to Earth. So it is on track to land off the coast of California this Sunday morning.
That is absolutely thrilling every time I see that. I also enjoyed, I only caught one of them, but I saw the patch on his uniform that one of the last astronauts you showed had the European Space Agency symbol on there. Besides Russia and the European Space Agency, who else is up there on the space station? Or who visits?
Japan is a big supporter of the space station. They do some resupply. They actually have a module on the space station as well. They are actually going to resupply. One of the things for the Artemis program is we're going to build a mini space station around the moon. Now, it's not going to be permanently manned like we do for the International Space Station, but crew will be able to fly to this little space station and then climb aboard a lander to land on the moon. And then when they're done on the moon, they can fly back to that space station and take the Orion capsule from the station back to Earth. So Japan has agreed to provide some resupply for that station. Canada is another country that has really helped with the space station. They provide the arm that's able to perform maintenance and grab a hold of resupply ships. They're actually building another arm for that mini space station too. Several European countries, all the way from Germany and Italy and France and England, a lot of the European Space Agency countries have contributed as well to the space station. I think when we go back to the moon and Mars, it won't just be Americans. There will be astronauts from several countries going with us back to the moon and to Mars, as it should be.
Well, it's just thrilling. absolutely thrilling. Do we have any more questions in the chat? Let me just check here. Oh, well, Hannah says this has been one of my favorite presentations of yours.
Well,
So,
thank you.
Yeah, we have had Joel come on and explain the whole world of space to us often, and it's never quite often enough because there's always so much to know, and it's quite an accomplishment to be able to stay up with it, Joel, as
Well,
you
it's
do
it's
now.
thank you. It's an exciting time in space exploration. Everything from the Webb telescope working and sending back wonderful pictures to the Space Launch System launching. We've got the Europa Clipper is getting ready to launch next year to explore the frozen, the ocean under the frozen surface of the moon of Jupiter, Europa. We've got rovers on Mars. We're getting ready to send a spacecraft to collect the samples that the rover has been sampling for us and bring them back to Earth. A lot of exciting things to learn about space and Earth. If you go out to nasa.gov, there are plenty of materials to answer questions about the space program, whether you're interested in Mars or Jupiter or astronauts or holidays in space. Now the LaSalle Library has a lot of good books about space exploration too, but nasa.gov is a place you can go to get the latest on the current missions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing all this information with us, Joel. It's spectacular. And thank you for writing this program, especially because it's something brand new to us and has been really nice insight into how our astronauts are willing to share their time away from their families for the space program. It's really terrific. Well, thank you to our audience for attending, and I hope you have all enjoyed the program. If you could please complete the pop-up survey that will appear when we close the Zoom connection, we'd appreciate that too. And now, Joel, I'll turn it back over to you for closing comments.
Well, I hope everyone learned something. I certainly did. Every time I do a presentation, I learn a little bit. And so it's fun to, I did not realize that we didn't have more missions of the space shuttle during the Christmas time. So that was one of the things that I learned. But it was neat to see all the pictures of the crews up on the space station and the fun that they have. And, besides those astronauts, a lot of people on the ground working hard to make sure that their flight goes well. And if there's a problem, they're there to help. So a lot of people spend time away from families during the holidays to support the space program, and we appreciate them. And appreciate you tuning in to listen to this presentation. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas and a great 2023.
Again, thank you, Joel, and thank you to our audience. Until next time, we wish you a wonderful holiday season, and we hope to see you virtually in January. Good night.